After an exhausting 9-hour drive through a snowstorm, I arrived home eager to surprise my wife for her birthday, armed with a cake and maybe a touch of hope. As I quietly stepped inside, I overheard the last part of a conversation that made my heart drop. Abigail's sister joked, "God, I hope he crashes. I could use the insurance," to which Abigail laughingly replied, "or at least enjoy a few months of silence." Their laughter echoed in my ears as I placed the cake on the counter, feeling like an unwelcome outsider in a moment that should have been filled with love. The next morning, without a word, I left. 3 weeks passed before she realized the weight of her words and began to regret them. To add some context, I'm a 33-year-old man, and my wife, Abigail, is 31. We've been married for 7 years, a classic love story that began when we were high school sweethearts. We parted ways for college, but found our way back into each other's arms at a mutual friend's wedding. It seemed perfect until recently. In the last 6 months, Abigail has become distant. She's been spending more time with her sister Mia and a new group of friends who seem to live beyond their means, driving flashy cars and taking expensive vacations. I'm not judging, but the change in her priorities was hard to ignore. Abigail's critical comments about our humble home began to surface, leaving me questioning where we stood and what happened to the future he once dreamed of together. Tied up neatly, or so I thought. For a while, I had been feeling the pressure about upping my career game. It felt like everyone was wondering when I would move past the entry-level phase and start climbing the ladder. I brushed it off as a temporary concern. Life seemed pretty good overall. We had a cozy 3-bedroom home in a nice neighborhood, to reliable cars, and enjoy an annual vacation. Nothing extravagant, but we were content. At least, that's what I believed. Then came Abigail's birthday last week. February birthdays in the Midwest can be pretty grim, cold weather, snowstorms, and frequently dashed plans. So this year I wanted to make it extra special for her. Her birthday fell on a Tuesday, and she mentioned wanting to visit her sister over the weekend to indulge in a spa outing on Saturday. I pretended work commitments would keep me home, but in truth, I'd secretly taken Friday off. My grand plan was to surprise her by showing up at her sister Mia's place on Friday evening, armed with a cake from her favorite bakery. The icing on the cake, or so I thought, was a reservation for a fancy dinner, a restaurant she'd always wanted to try. I had meticulously packed a bag with her favorite dress and shoes, ready to sweep her off her feet for a birthday she'd never forget. Everything was set, but sometimes the best laid plans have a way of unraveling in the most unexpected ways. I decided to go for it. Thursday night, the weather reports really took a turn for the worse. A winter storm warning was issued, predicting a heavy blanket of 6 to 10 inches of snow spreading across 3 states directly along my planned route. Most people would have canceled immediately, but I was resolute. Part of it was sheer stubbornness. Part of it was not wanting to waste that hard-earned reservation at a restaurant I'd waited 3 weeks to book. I hit the road at 7 a.m. on Friday. What should have been a breezy 6-hour journey transformed into a grueling 9-hour ordeal. The snow fell so heavily that the road ahead vanished into a blur, and I could barely make out the tail lights in front of me. The highway turned into a slow-moving maze as 3 separate accidents brought everything to a crawl. I had to stop twice just to gulp down some coffee and stay awake, but the thought of Abigail's face lighting up when I finally walked through that door that made it all worthwhile. I pulled into Mia's neighborhood just as the clock struck for p.m. The streets were a winter wonderland or a nightmare, depending on your perspective, as the snowplows had yet to make their rounds. This forced me to park a block away, the only option available, and brave the ankle-deep snow with a cake box in hand. Each step was a trek, and by the time I reached Mia's front door, my jeans were completely drenched. The door was slightly ajar, and from inside the warmth of laughter and lively conversation spilled out. As I was about to announce my arrival, I caught a snippet of the conversation mid-air. My name. Abigail's voice cut through the chatter. She was in the middle of a sentence with Noah, and then, just like that, there was a sudden hush. Mia said something inaudible, followed by Abigail, speaking a little more clearly this time. He texted earlier saying he was stuck at work, probably still there. A mixture of curiosity and a touch of unease settled in as I stood on the doorstep, cake in hand, ready to join the gathering. In this weather they would have sent everyone home, Mia responded. Well, he's probably sprawled on the couch again, lost in that ridiculous game of his with his headphones on. I froze in the entryway, taken aback. This wasn't her usual playful teasing about my gaming. Her tone dripped with genuine disdain. At least he's not here ruining your birthday week, Mia continued. I almost made my presence known then, but I hesitated. How I wish I had said something. Instead, I listened to what came next. Oh, can you imagine? Abigail laughed. He'd want to tag along for dinner tonight, recycling the same 3 stories he always does. Then he'd look all dejected, like a sad puppy, when I mentioned going out without him tomorrow. My stomach twisted in knots as I stood there, clutching this ridiculous cake after enduring a grueling 9-hour drive through a fierce blizzard. I had made this treacherous journey just to deliver it, only to overhear my wife making fun of me with her sister. At least he's safely out of the way, Mia remarked with an edge of sarcasm, adding that the roads were in terrible condition. My friend's husband got stranded on the highway for 3 hours. There was a brief silence before Abigail uttered words that would be etched in my memory forever. Honestly, I hope he crashed. I could use the insurance. I inadvertently let out a small noise, and they both went silent. I feared I had been discovered, but then Mia chimed in. Or at least a few months of peace and quiet. Their laughter echoed in the room, genuine and harsh, as they entertained the idea of my demise or hospitalization. In that moment I felt an overwhelming sense of disbelief and betrayal, emotions that would linger long after their laughter had faded. As I contemplated my next move, I found myself wandering into the kitchen. I set the cake box gently on the counter, turned around, and walked right out. The look on their faces was unforgettable. I had never seen anyone go pale so quickly. Abigail called after me, her voice tinged with urgency, but I continued my trek through the snow back to my car. I sank into the driver's seat and just sat there for about 20 minutes, unable to even muster the energy to start the car. Meanwhile, my phone was going off like crazy. By the time I glanced at it, I had missed 17 calls and received 38 text messages. I didn't read a single one. Instead, I drove to a nearby motel, shelling out $80 for a room that reeked of cigarettes and despair. There, I switched off my phone and stared blankly at the ceiling until the first light of dawn crept in. When I finally powered my phone back on, It buzzed with 63 new texts and 29 missed calls. I skipped over reading the messages entirely and shot a quick text to my buddy Theodore. Something went down with Abigail, and I desperately needed a place to stay for a few days. True to form, Theo, the absolute legend that he is, just shot back with the doors unlocked, and there are beers in the fridge. So I drove 9 hours back home in one straight shot. While Abigail was still hanging out at Mia's, I packed 3 suitcases with clothes and essentials, grabbed our important documents from the fireproof box, and made my way over to Theo's. That was 3 days ago. I still haven't had any contact with Abigail, not for her lack of trying. She's been calling me from all sorts of numbers and leaving a trail of voicemails, swinging from tearful to furious. She even turned up at my workplace yesterday, but I had already called in sick. Then, today, I went to the bank and took half of our joint savings to open a new account in my name. I also froze our joint credit cards and changed all my passwords. I told my boss I needed to work remotely for a while. Last week was a whirlwind because of a family emergency, and while everything on the outside seems orderly, inside I feel like I'm spiraling. I keep replaying those haunting words in my head. I hope he crashes. I could use the insurance. Who says that about someone they claim to love? Laughing at the thought of your partner being silenced for months, it's more than just hurtful. The worst part, this probably isn't the first time she's said something like this. It's just the first time I overheard it. Now our friends are reaching out, and apparently Abigail is telling everyone we just had a little misunderstanding and that I am overreacting. Talk about classic gaslighting. One mutual friend texted me, assuming we'd work through everything without even bothering to hear my side. I haven't shared the full details with anyone. Even Theo knows everything, though he hasn't pressed me about it. He makes sure the fridge is always full and respects my need for space. Last night, I finally found the courage to read through some of the messages Abigail sent me. They unfolded in a pattern I've come to expect. First, there was confusion. Where did you go? Why did you leave? Then she turned defensive. It was just a joke. You weren't supposed to hear that. Soon came the anger. You're being so childish. Just answer your damn phone. Next, her tone shifted to manipulation. I'm worried about you. Please, just let me know you're okay. Finally, the threats arrived. If you don't call me back, I'll report you missing to the police. She finished with a touch of self-pity. I can't believe you'd do this to me. This to me on my birthday weekend. Not a single heartfelt apology. Not a word acknowledging just how messed up her comments were. After reading that, I blocked her number. I'm not ready to reach out, and maybe I never will be. Today was different. I sat down with a financial advisor named Milton, someone a coworker recommended. We spent 2 hours combing through our finances, uncovering some pretty eye-opening details. For instance, I discovered that Abigail has been spending $708 a month on online shopping for the past year. Not to mention, she opened a store credit card I had no idea about, carrying a balance of $3,000. Milton helped me devise a plan to separate our finances as smoothly as possible. It's all above board, nothing underhanded, but it does mean Abigail is about to. I need her to face reality and reevaluate her spending habits. I've left our joint account alone for now should cover this month's mortgage and utilities. After that, who knows what will happen? I'm not trying to leave her without anything. I just want her to realize that actions have consequences. Here's the tough part. I keep doubting myself, questioning if I'm blowing things out of proportion. Was it all just a bad joke? But then I remember the way she said it, these with which she wished me dead, followed by her laughter. That's when I know I'm not imagining things. Theo suggests I should talk to her to get some closure. Maybe he's right. But right now, I'm still trying to process everything, to understand the person I thought I married. Tomorrow will mark for days since I've stayed silent. Abigail's sister, Mia, reached out to me today. I remained silent. Later, a text from our neighbor Lydia informed me that Abigail was sitting on our front steps in tears because I'd changed the garage door code. While a small part of me felt a twinge of guilt, most of me didn't. The true source of my sleepless nights isn't even that offhand insurance comment. It's the latter, their ability to so easily find amusement in the prospect of my suffering. Who does that? And for how long has she harbored such feelings? Lately, I've also been pondering the life insurance policy we took out 3 years ago. It's not a massive sum, just $500,000, but apparently enough to make someone wish for a crash. I've decided to call the insurance company tomorrow to discuss changing the beneficiary. I realize this message is getting lengthy, but putting it all down in words is oddly soothing. Theo is meeting a friend over coffee tomorrow who happens to be a divorce lawyer. I can't say for sure if that's the direction things are headed, but I need to understand my options. For those curious about my next steps, truthfully, I have no idea. Part of me fantasizes about vanishing completely, changing my number, moving to a new state, and starting fresh. Yet that seems like running away. Another part craves confrontation, longing to see her reaction when I throw her own words back at her. I want her to experience just a fraction of the pain that's consuming me. Ultimately, though, I crave relief from the emptiness I feel inside. I want to stop picturing her face every time I close my eyes and get rid of the echo of her words and laughter that plays endlessly in my mind. For now, I'm just taking things one day at a time, trying to stay focused and grounded. I'm in the middle of crafting new plans, leaving her to wonder where I might be and what I intend to do next. If you're curious about how this unfolds, I'll keep you posted as things progress. But even if interest fades, thanks for letting me vent here. Sometimes it feels like the internet is the only space where strangers are willing to listen without jumping to solve everything. I'm still here, still breathing. Here's a quick recap for those who are just tuning in. I embarked on a grueling 9-hour drive through a snowstorm to surprise my wife, Abigail, at her sister Mia's house for her birthday. Instead, I overheard Abigail telling Mia she hoped I'd crashed to cash in on the insurance. Devastated, I left the cake on the counter and walked out. For the past 3 days, I've been crashing at my friend Theodore's place, ignoring her calls and texts while trying to sort out my finances. Many of you wanted to know what would happen next, so here I am, sharing the latest chapter. It's been a week since I last reached out, and 10 days since those haunting words etched themselves into my mind like a relentless tick-tock tune. They say that anger eventually dissipates. At least, that's what all those self-help podcasts Theodore fills our kitchen with like to promise. The fury is supposed to melt away, leaving clarity and space for wiser choices. I'm still waiting for that moment of calm to hit. Last Wednesday marked for days of silence. I woke up with a planet, a sensible or healthy one, but it was the only thing that felt right at the time. I waited until 9:30 a.m., knowing Abigail would be at work. Then I returned to what used to be our shared home, armed with 3 empty suitcases and Theodore's pickup truck. I found everything unchanged, as if I'd never left. The coffee mug still sits on the counter, a silent witness to this strange morning. My suitcase, already filled to capacity, rests near the door, yet everything around me feels off, as if I stumbled onto a movie set, recreating my life rather than the real thing. I began in the bedroom, methodically packing my clothes, sparing only those that Abigail had chosen for me. I leave them hanging like forgotten cocoons in the closet. From the dresser, I take my grandmother's watch, only comforting relic in this Evelyn, my journals from the bookshelf. The external hard drive, filled with the memories we captured, finds its way into my bag. Perhaps it's petty, but I bought that drive. In the office, I dismantle my gaming setup. The desk remains a shared purchase, but the chair comes with me. I bought it after she complained about the squeaky wheels on the old one. As I rummage through the filing cabinet, I stumble upon our marriage certificate. I take that too, though I'm not quite sure why. It was a moment that felt undeniably significant. Room by room, I embarked on a deliberate extraction of myself from the spaces we once shared. My cherished books, the vinyl records that play the soundtrack of my life, and the collection of tools gathering dust in the garageel packed away. Even the eccentric metal sculpture I'd impulsively bought at an art fair, which she had always detested, was hauled out. For hours I worked to meticulously fade my presence from our home. I left behind anything we had chosen together, the couch. He finally agreed on, after 3 exhaustive weekends of searching, the kitchen table where we shared countless meals, and the bed that witnessed our shared laughter, our arguments, and our reconciliations. I didn't touch our framed photos that adorned the walls and surfaces. There was something satisfying about leaving behind those images, a silent testament to the happiness she chose to abandon. Before closing this chapter, I did 3 final things. First, I set the thermostat to a chilly 62 degrees at temperature Abigail always detested. Insisting anything below 70 was unbearable. Next, I unscrewed the light bulb from the refrigerator, a seemingly minor inconvenience, but one that would inevitably nag at her every time she reached for a midnight snack in the dark. After that, I changed the Wi-Fi password to "I hope he crash 2023" and left the router unplugged. Just minor, spiteful acts, little reminders that would quietly echo my absence in countless, subtle ways, even before my larger absence truly hit her. As I locked the door for the last time, I noticed our neighbor, Lydia, gathering her mail. Her eyes flicked between my belongings packed into Theodore's truck and my expression. Her eyebrows lifted in silent inquiry. I offered a casual shrug, saying I was just dropping off some items for donation. It was obvious she didn't believe a word, her skeptical gaze revealing as much, but she nodded politely and headed inside, adhering to that unwritten Midwest code. Avoid uncomfortable questions. Mind your own business. Normally, little things can really get under my skin, but on that particular day, I found myself feeling unexpectedly grateful. When we arrived back at Theodore's place, I hauled everything into his garage. Everything except for 2 suitcases just filled with clothes and some essentials, which I took inside. Without uttering a word or asking a single question, Theodore simply lent a hand. Once we were done, he quietly handed me a beer, his way of acknowledging that sometimes life really does hit you hard when you least expect it. Thursday rolled around, and it was time to face the financial reality. I met with Milton once more. He had meticulously compiled all our account details into a spreadsheet, which honestly gave me a bit of a sinking feeling. I discovered that Abigail had been spending far more than I'd ever imagined. It wasn't just the store credit card I was already aware of. There were numerous cash withdrawals from our joint checking account, $300 here, $500, adding up to more than $12,000 over the past year, and there were no receipts or purchases to explain where it all went. With Milton's help, I drafted a formal letter to request a financial separation, a necessary step to reclaim my sense of stability and control. Not divorce papers, at least. Not yet. Instead, I sent a clear message that I wouldn't shoulder any new debts she might rack up. I had it delivered right to her desk. Was it petty? Maybe. But was it effective? Absolutely. I didn't stop there. I canceled our shared streaming accounts and subscription services, changed the passwords on our cloud storage full of important documents, and redirected all my mail to a PO box. They were small, deliberate steps to start untangling the threads of our shared life. That Friday morning, I finally braced myself to check social media. There they were, 17 messages on Facebook, 30 for D-Miz on Instagram, and even my long-unused Twitter had notifications. Everyone seemed to be buzzing, curious about what was going on with Abigail and me. Some were picking sides without a clue about the real story. I posted just one thing, a photo of a half-eaten birthday cake sitting lonely on the kitchen counter. No caption, no explanation, just the cake. Within an hour, my phone went haywire. Friends texted, desperate to decode the cryptic image. Abigail called 6 times in 20 minutes. Her best friend, Jill, even reached out to check on me, saying Abigail was worried sick. But I kept silent, responding to none of them. Later that afternoon, I met with Raymond from work. I needed to explain why I required some personal time away. Raymond was. Unexpectedly, he was incredibly understanding. He simply asked how much time I needed and if I could still manage the Wilson project remotely. I assured him I could, needing about 2 weeks for the project. He didn't press the issue, just gave me a reassuring clap on the shoulder and said, sometimes taking a step back is the best way to find clarity. It was the first decent advice I'd received since everything had spiraled out of control. Saturday marked the first real confrontation. While at the grocery store, I was lost in thought, staring at frozen pizzas, trying to remember which brand Theodore preferred. Suddenly, a voice called my name. I turned to see Mia, standing there with a shopping basket, looking like she just seen a ghost. She launched straight into it, saying how Abigail was worried sick and how everyone was concerned. She pleaded with me to just talk to her. When I remained silent, her frustration boiled over. She accused me of being childish and insisted it had been a harmless joke between sisters. that I was overreacting. That's when I finally found my voice. I asked her bluntly if she thought joking about wishing death on your spouse for insurance money was normal for sisters. I questioned if she'd be okay with her boyfriend overhearing her say something like that. I asked if she understood that this joke was the peak of Abigail's growing disdain over the months. She had no real answers, just mumbled the excuses about misunderstandings and context. I put the pizza back, left my half-filled cart in the aisle, and walked out. Was it petty? Maybe, but it felt satisfying. Sunday was calm. Theodore had some friends over to watch the game. They sensed something was off but didn't question me. Instead, they handed me beers, making space for me on the couch. For those 3 hours, I almost felt normal again. But then Monday came, bringing reality with it. My temporary leave from work began, and the house I had shared with Abigail for 5 years stood half empty across town. My phone flashed with 15 missed calls from her overnight. I finally listened to one of her voicemails. Her voice was different, scratchy, and raw. She said she hadn't been sleeping, mentioned how the house felt wrong without me, and confessed she'd noticed more and more of my things missing. Fear and uncertainty gnawed at her as she reached out, asking if I was ever coming back, or if I had already turned our marriage into just another ghost story. Her choice of words struck me, reducing our years together to the fleeting, ephemeral connections often found on dating apps. It added another layer of steeliness to the moment. After texting Theodore that I was going for a drive, I found myself parked in front of our home, Biggles' home, my home. I lingered there for nearly an hour, observing the little details that suddenly felt foreign to me. Her car was missing, but the porch light was defiantly on, despite the bright daylight. The overflowing recycling bin, packed with empty wine bottles, painted a vivid picture of the days I missed. Instead of going inside, I sat there, lost in thought. How many mortgage payments did we have left? Should I sell the house and split the profits or buy her out? How did we transform from a promise of forever to bickering over finances in less than 2 weeks? By Tuesday, the financial surprises continued. A notification from our credit card company revealed unusual charges. Over $2,000 spent at department stores and boutiques. Was it a desperate grab for some semblance of normalcy, or an act of financial recklessness? I didn't know, but I reported the card stolen and had a new one sent to my P.O. box. Another connection severed. That night I posted a status on Linnea, deep breath in the silence that surrounded me. It wasn't directly about Abigail, but it was telling. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same. It was a cryptic message, but for those who knew, it spoke volumes. Abigail and her friends would surely see it. This subtle narrative shift hinted that things were more complex than a simple emotional outburst. Wednesday marked exactly 2 weeks since those words were spoken in Mia's kitchen. 2 weeks of my silence and Abigail's increasingly frantic attempts to reach me. At Theodore's suggestion, I met with a lawyer, a kind guy named Milton, confusingly sharing a name with my financial advisor. He outlined the course ahead. Given we had no children, a divorce would be straightforward, yet the house and finances presented their own tangled mess. He recommended starting with a formal separation. To give us both some breathing room, I agreed to the plan, and he immediately drafted the paperwork. He said he could have it served as soon as Friday. Everything was moving quickly now, gaining momentum with each day that passed in silence. Things took a turn on Thursday. I was working remotely from Theodore's dining table when the doorbell rang. Theodore answered it and returned with an uncomfortable expression. He said Abigail was outside, crying and demanding to see me. I froze with my coffee cup halfway to my lips as Theodore awkwardly asked whether he should send her away or let her in. Neither option felt right. I wasn't ready to face her or hear whatever apologies she had prepared, but turning her away felt like conceding that I was being unreasonable. So I nodded, and Theodore let her in. Abigail looked a mess. Her hair was unwashed. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she wore a sweater that seemed to have been her companion for days. She stood in the doorway, staring at me as if she couldn't quite believe I was there. I didn't rise or offer her a seat. I just waited. She was the first to speak, asking if I was really having her served with separation papers. Apparently Milton's assistant had called to verify our address, and Abigail had pushed for more information until they revealed what was happening. So much for keeping it under wraps. When I confirmed the truth, she asked why I wouldn't talk to her, why I wouldn't let her explain. Her voice was shaky, like the words were struggling to escape her lips. I told her there was nothing left to explain. He had already heard everything. She insisted I'd misunderstood, blaming work stress, financial worries, and her sister bringing out the worst in her. She claimed it had been nothing more than dark humor after a few glasses of wine. I asked if she could remember her exact words. Hesitantly, she claimed she had said, "I wish he'd just crash on the couch for a while," and that I'd misunderstood. That's when I took out my phone and played the recording. Yes, I had a recording net because I had planned it, but because I'd been using a voice memo app with a brain full of birthday gift ideas for her, I never expected to stumble upon something life-changing. As I searched for inspiration beyond just a cake, I left the recording running on my phone by accident. Or maybe it was fate. Her words echoed through the speaker in her own unmistakable voice. "God, I hope he crashes. I could use the insurance." A harsh laugh followed, and my heart dropped. Abigail's face turned as pale as a ghost when she realized I'd heard everything. She lunged for my phone, tears in her eyes, pleading it was all a misunderstanding, that she'd never harm me. All I asked was one simple question. Would she have told me if I hadn't overheard it myself? Her silence was enough of an answer. Theodore, who'd wisely vanished when emotions flared, cautiously returned with a suggestion that we should postpone this conversation until things simmered down. But Abigail was fixated on me, desperately rattling off revelations she'd come to over the past couple of weeks. How she depended on me. How empty the house felt in my absence. How alone she was without me by her side. It was a dramatic display of tears, trembling hands, and a quivering voice, each perfectly timed to tug at the heart. 2 weeks ago, I might have been swayed, ready to forgive, but my perspective had shifted. During that fortnight, I didn't just ponder her words, I delved into why she uttered them. I saw the disdain that must have been festering beneath the surface, the casual cruelty she could exhibit. This wasn't the woman I believed I'd married, so I laid my truth bare. I didn't know if I'd ever trust her again. The separation papers weren't about retribution. They were a shield while I discerned if anything was left in our relationship worth salvaging. She didn't take it well, accusing me of discarding 7 years over a careless remark. She insisted everyone says things they don't mean, but the damage was done, and I was left questioning everything. Late in the evening, as I listened to her venting, it struck me again how emotionless I felt. Even as she accused me of cruelty for distancing myself and ignoring her, her words cascaded over me like a river rushing past rocks, leaving them unchanged. Once her energy waned and her tirade ended, I calmly informed her that the separation papers would arrive the next day, urging her to read them thoroughly before deciding on her next steps. She departed in tears, mascara smudging down her face like a stark reminder of heartbreak. Later, Theodore re-entered the room, handed me a beer, and lightened the tense air with a quip about how awkward it was, likening it to the ordeal of his parents' divorce. Dark humor, yes, but in that moment I valued the camaraderie it offered. Yet that night sleep escaped me. I couldn't shake the memory of her face, the shock and panic etched into her expression when she heard the recording. What haunted me was the absence of genuine remorse, replaced instead by sheer fear of the looming consequences. Friday came, and with it the papers as promised. By the afternoon, Abigail's sister fired off cryptic social media posts railing against men who, in her view, dismantle marriages over mere misunderstandings. It's funny, I mused, how families tend to rally around their own, even when deep down they grasp the truth of who is truly at fault. Amidst this chaos, something unexpected offered a glimmer of relief, an unexpected message from Jill, Abigail's closest friend. She reached out with a simple, yet profound text expressing sorrow for my ordeal. After hearing the complete story, including Abigail's cutting words, Jill confided that she'd known Abigail since college and had witnessed the streak of cruelty in her before. She had even attempted to confront Abigail about it, only to be shut down. It was the first acknowledgement from Abigail's circle validating my pain instead of diminishing it. Though I left the message unanswered, it lingered in my mind, perhaps revealing to me that what I had witnessed wasn't a slip, but rather a peek into her true-natured flags I might have overlooked for far too long. With the weekend came quiet solitude. Theodore had gone out on a date, leaving me to enjoy the sanctuary of an empty house. I treated myself to pizza and immersed in a sci-fi series Abigail had always refused to watch with me. I tried to push away thoughts of an alternate life, a parallel timeline, where we'd be sharing a quiet night together, celebrating our quirky monthly pizza night. On our ritual Sunday movie night, amidst popcorn and laughter, Abigail sent a text that stopped me cold simply. I'm sorry. It was her first heartfelt apology in 17 endless days, arriving without the usual web of excuses or pleas for conversation. Just those 2 words. I didn't reply, but her message lingered in my mind long after. By Monday morning, day 18 in the strange new chapter, I awoke to find Abigail parked outside Theodore's house, just watching the door from her car. Theodore pointed her out to me from the kitchen window. Curious and a bit unsettled, I called her. She explained she needed to see me to confirm that I was truly okay. She promised she wouldn't approach the house or create any drama, just a quiet witness to this reality. It was both worryingly strange and strangely touching. I urged her to return home, saying this wasn't helping either of us. She asked, if I'd read her message, and I said yes. When she questioned whether I believed her apology, I hesitated, unsure. Then came the dreaded question, "Are you filing for divorce?" I answered truthfully, hadn't decided yet. She lingered another hour before reluctantly driving away. Later, Theodore suggested we change the locks on my house, just to be safe, and I agreed. We spent the afternoon installing new deadbolts, forming another small rip in the fabric of our shared life. Today marks 3 weeks from that fateful night at Maya's 3 weeks of mostly silent reflection and picking through the remnants of what I believe was a strong marriage. Sleep evades me. I find myself missing ridiculous little things. The way Abigail splurged on the good coffee, her off-key singing in the shower each morning, and her whimsical collection of fuzzy socks that somehow always ended up on my side of the bed. Yet I don't miss the creepy resentment that I now see had been building for months. I don't miss the constant tension of her shifting moods or the subtle jabs disguised as humor. The separation papers are now signed and filed, and the lawyer has confirmed that we're officially wading into legal territory. It's been 6 months since we entered the separation phase, still legally tied, yet miles apart in every other way, with our finances unwrapped and a formal split. By the end of these months, we either reconcile or move forward with divorce. 3 weeks ago, I would have confidently said reconciliation was a lost cause. Now, I am not so sure. It's not because I've forgiven her, but because disentangling a 7-year marriage is like unraveling a complex tapestry with homes, bank accounts, families, and friendships all woven tightly in ways I'm only now starting to grasp. Just as I'm writing this, my phone pings with a notification. Another message from Abigail asking if we can meet somewhere neutral to talk. I'm at a crossroads. Part of me is open to hearing what she has to say, yet another part dreads the prospect of dragging this out further. Most of me is just exhausted by it all. Still, I suspect I'll meet her, possibly to navigate through everything I've only dared to share with strangers online. I'll provide an update if anything meaningful happens. I thank everyone for the advice on my last post, even the quirky suggestions involving glitter and shampoo. Some of you definitely need therapy, but I'm grateful for the solidarity. I'm still here, still standing, and still breathing. It's been exactly 25 days since I left that cake on the counter. 25 days of silence, separation, and an overwhelming amount of adult responsibilities that I never wanted. This will likely be my last update, because really, how many times can you dissect a dead marriage before even the internet grows disinterested? Thank you for all the comments and DMs, yes, even the bizarre ones. No, I didn't plant fish in her car vents, you savages. Regarding our coffee shop, Mitinji arrived 15 minutes early, driven by the kind of anxiety that makes you intensely punctual. It was downtown at the small coffee shop at 2 p.m. on a Thursday. The place had just the right amount of hustle and bustle to provide background noise without letting our conversation be overheard. I picked a spot. As I settled into the corner table, I ordered a black coffee, more out of ritual than desire, and waited. Abigail arrived precisely on time, a surprise, since she usually had a habit of being fashionably late by 5 minutes. Her hair was perfectly done, her makeup subtle, and she wore the blue sweater I'd given her last Christmas. Everything seemed calculated. The first words out of her mouth caught me off guard. Instead of a greeting, She informed me that she'd lost 7 pounds since our breakup. She delivered it like a headline, expecting it to carry weight. Classic Abigail. I didn't give it any acknowledgement. Instead, I cut straight to the point and asked why she wanted to meet. She had prepared for this. Actual handwritten notes on a yellow legal pad were spread in front of her, something so unlike her that I nearly laughed. The woman, who couldn't be bothered to jot down a grocery list, had organized her thoughts into bullet points for this conversation. Her first point: she was genuinely, deeply sorry for the hurtful things she had said. They had been cruel and thoughtless, a byproduct of stress about her job and the irritation she felt when she thought I was missing her birthday weekend. To top it off, she'd been drinking with Mia all afternoon. The words just slipped out. When I asked her why she laughed after saying those things, she winced as if my question had startled her. Nervous laughter, she explained, claiming that Mia had a knack for bringing out her worst side. It was a foolish attempt to appear edgy and cool in front of her sister. Her second point laid bare: she'd been taking our relationship for granted, lulled into complacency by the sense of security I offered. She admitted she had stopped appreciating the things I did and had started focusing on what I wasn't doing. The past 3 weeks, she confessed, had been a wake-up call. She realized how much she relied on Minute just financially, though that was part of it, and at least she was honest about that. The house had become eerily quiet, she said, so much so that she had begun talking to herself just to hear another voice. Her final point was a desire to try couples therapy. She had already found a specialist in rebuilding trust after betrayal, and had even booked an initial appointment for the following week. There I was, sipping my now cold coffee, trying to read the expressions on her face. Was this the same woman who once casually wished me dead? Was this a heartfelt apology or just an act? Even as she wrapped up her prepared speech and set her legal pad aside, I couldn't quite tell. At last, she looked me in the eye and asked what was on my mind. I confessed that I was lost in thoughts of parallel universe imaging a different timeline where I hadn't driven through that snowstorm, where I never heard her fateful words. In that universe, I was still blissfully ignorant, sleeping beside someone who could laugh off thoughts of my demise. Her reaction was unexpected. She began to grin it in the dramatic way I'd seen in Theodore's living room, but with quiet tears she methodically wiped away, as if they were an inconvenience. I laid out my terms, not as points to debate, but as plain facts. The separation was to last the full 6 months. I wasn't ready to move back in yet, and while I wasn't ruling out reconciliation, I wasn't jumping into couples therapy either. I needed time. As I spoke, she nodded, each word seemingly landing like a small punch. When I finished, she simply asked if I hated her. Oddly enough, I didn't and still don't. There was definitely anger, disappointment, hurt but not hate. Her surprise was palpable. She admitted she'd been telling herself that I must hate her to justify being shut out so completely. She said it was almost worse that I didn't hate her because it suggested I no longer cared enough to feel anything that intense. That stung because there was some truth to it. The conversation trickled to an end, and we agreed to handle practical matters like the house and bills via email. She would continue paying the mortgage with her name on it, and I would cover my share of the utilities. We planned to reassess our arrangement at the 3-month mark. As we rose to leave, she paused, hesitating before asking if she could hug me. I declined, and she nodded as if she expected that answer. Then, gathering her belongings, she walked out. I sat there a little while longer, reflecting on what had just happened. I sat there for another half hour, lost in the surrealness of it all, having a business-like conversation with someone who had once seen me at my lowest moments. The person who was there when I broke down in tears, the one who held my head when food poisoning had me at my weakest. This was someone who knew all my embarrassing childhood stories by heart. And yet here we were, reducing 7 years of shared history and nothing more than bullet points on a notepad. Life took on a peculiar new rhythm after that. I decided to extend my remote work setup through the end of the month. Theodore's spare room gradually shed its temporary vibe as I invested in a decent mattress topper and hung some pictures to make it feel more like home. I settled into New Rotten's morning runs, work, hitting the gym 3 times a week, and cooking dinner with Theodore whenever our schedules allowed. This silent strategy appeared to be working in unexpected ways. With me keeping my distance, Abigail seemed to finally be doing some soul-searching. Her sister, Mia, reached out to me about a week after our coffee shop meeting, expressing remorse. She admitted to being a bad influence on Abigail, pushing her to be brutally hunstead. Mina's some misguided form of sisterly bonding. Mia confessed her disgust at laughing that day and didn't ask for forgiveness, only wanted me to know she recognized her part in the whole mess. I didn't reply, but I did take screenshots, not as leverage, but as a reminder that my feelings of betrayal were justified. Meanwhile, the financial reality hit harder than expected. One of Abigail's friends, Jill, contacted me again, mentioning that Abigail was struggling to keep up her lifestyle on her income alone. She had to cancel her monthly spa membership and was looking for a roommate to help with the mortgage, although she didn't want anyone moving in, still clinging to the hope that I would return home. I saw the manipulation play using a friend, the guilt trip. Maybe I didn't take the bait. I thanked Jill for the update and mentioned that Abigail was welcome to speak with my lawyer if she wanted to discuss finances. Around day 30, something in Abigail's approach shifted, reflected in the tone of her emails. As she grew more practical and less emotional, she began to make changes in her life. She started selling her high-end clothes and bags on resale apps and got rid of the impractical convertible she insisted on buying last summer. In an email, she even mentioned considering taking classes to boost her earning potential. It was like watching someone mature at lightning speed, and, strangely, I felt a sense of pride for her, even as I remained resolute in not rushing to her rescue. On day 35, there was an unexpected twist. At my P.O. box, I discovered a thick envelope from Abigail. It contained a handwritten letter, 10 pages, front and back, and a USB drive. The letter was essentially a chronicle of our relationship through her eyes. It detailed every significant moment, both good and bad. The romantic proposal by the lake, our first serious fight about her spending habits, the heart-wrenching miscarriage in our 3rd year that we never fully addressed, and her evolving perception of Mephram partner. the provider to obstacle. The honesty was brutal and unfiltered, a rawness we never reached in our conversations. She confessed to resenting my satisfaction with what she saw as a mundane life, craving more excitement, and secretly comparing our lifestyle to her friends, even as she knew they were laden with debt just to uphold appearances. She also admitted to flirting with a coworker, Jason, the previous year, though she insisted it never went beyond that. The USB drive held audio files recordings of her therapy sessions, shared with her therapist's consent. It seemed curiosity got the better of me, and I listened to one session, but it was too gut-wrenching to endure more. Hearing her dissect our marriage with a stranger, and the genuine bewilderment in her voice as she attempted to explain her comments about the insurance money, was overwhelmingly intimate. It struck a nerve. I promptly deleted the audio files and tucked the letter away in my document box, unsure if I'd ever revisit it. Yet it felt too significant to discard. By day 40, another development emerged. I bumped into our neighbor Lydia at the hardware store, and she casually mentioned that Abigail had been hosting some sort of weekly gathering at her place. On Wednesday nights, the street outside the house was buzzing with activity. Every week, 6 or 7 cars would line up in front, igniting my curiosity. So this particular Wednesday, I couldn't resist pulling in a few houses down to discreetly watch the scene. As the clock struck between 6 and 6:30, 7 women arrived, all around Abigail's age. Some faces were familiar, or friends from before, while others were complete strangers. Approaching them felt inappropriate, so I settled for sending a quick, casual text to Jill later, inquiring about Abigail's latest endeavors. Jill's response surprised me. Abigail had started a women's accountability group focused on financial literacy and breaking toxic relationship patterns, certainly not what I had imagined. Then, on what I marked as day 45, the dynamics on social media took a surprising twist. Mia, who's been silent online about our situation, suddenly posted a heartfelt message. She expressed her support for my sister during her awakening and mentioned aiding her in recognizing destructive behaviors. Mia tagged Abigail, who responded simply with, "Love you, but this journey is mine to share when I'm ready." This post stirred our circle of friends. Messages started pouring in. People who had given me space now wanted to understand the situation. Rumors ran wild. Some whispered that Abigail was in rehab, completely false. Others speculated that I had emptied our bank accounts, leaving her penniless again, untrue. And there was talk of us having years of problems, which was partially right. Despite everything, I stayed silent and let the whispers linger. By day 50, a significant moment arrived. For the first time since leaving, I returned to the house while Abigail was home. I needed to fetch my winter gear from the garage. Minnesota springs can be deceitful, and an unexpected 6 inches of snow had blanketed the ground overnight. I texted Abigail asking if it was okay, and she quickly responded that it was, reassuring me she'd be home all day working on a project. Driving into the driveway felt unreal. The lawn was unkempt, and the flower bed showed signs of neglectable indications of my absence. Abigail greeted me at the door with a calm demeanor, told me to take all the time I needed, and then quietly went back to her work in the kitchen. The house felt different when I walked in. as if it had undergone a subtle transformation. The usual scent of my laundry detergent was replaced by the calming aroma of the essential oil diffuser Abigail had always wanted to use, though I'd previously found it overpowering. Photos on the walls had been rearranged, and some furniture shifted drastically, just enough to catch my attention. In the garage, I discovered my winter things neatly boxed and labeled. Instead of being thrown together hurriedly, they were meticulously packed. She'd even included items I had forgotten, like my favorite scarf and the expensive gloves my mom had gifted me to Christmases ago. As I loaded these boxes into my car, Abigail appeared with a mug of coffee in hand and asked if I'd like to see what she'd been working on inside. There was no pressure, just a simple offer, and curiosity won out. I followed her into the kitchen, where she had set up a small art studio. She was painting wooden signs with inspirational quotes, kind she used to tease others for buying at Target. She seemed a bit bashful as she explained that the process was therapeutic and that she even sold a few at a local farmer's market. We chatted for maybe 15 minutes about surface-level topics: the weather, her parents' anniversary, the water heater acting up again. It was the kind of conversation you have with someone you once shared everything with, yet now felt distant from. As I was about to leave, she said something that deeply resonated with me. She confessed she'd been reading about grief and realized she was mourning the loss of our marriage while trying to save it, a contradiction that stirred within her constantly. I nodded, saying I understood because I, too, felt that same contradiction. It was the most genuine exchange we'd had in years. Day 60 brought a sense of financial clarity. A meeting with Milton, the financial advisor at the lawyer, still a bit confusing, grievous that Abigail had stayed true to our agreement. She hadn't taken on any joint debt and was regularly making payments on her personal credit cards. She'd even paid off a store card I hadn't been aware of. Milton suggested it might be time to discuss more permanent financial arrangements, depending on my decision about reconciliation. Over the past few weeks, I had become so consumed with setting boundaries that I neglected the heart of the matter, decision I had avoided for far too long. So one day I sat down and listed the pros and cons, trying to weigh if it was worth attempting to salvage a 7-year marriage or whether it was time to walk away for good. Despite my efforts, the list provided no real answers. Some decisions are simply too profound to be made on paper. On the 70th day, Theodore shared that he was seeing someone new, and they were serious enough to be discussing moving in together in a few months. He kindly assured me I could stay as long as I needed, but his message was clear: it was time to start imagining a different future. That weekend I toured 3 apartments and landed on the second, only a cozy, 1-bedroom place in a walkable downtown area, complete with a decent kitchen. It felt like a fresh start. I emailed Abigail to let her know, and her response was curt but open. I understand, but the door here remains open. Moving day arrived on the 75th day, and Theodore, along with 2 friends, helped me lug boxes and furniture up 3 flights of stairs since the elevator was out of order. We celebrated our hard work with pizza and beer, having an impromptu picnic on the living room floor since I hadn't bought a dining table yet. That night, after everyone left, I finally opened the folder on my external hard drive filled with 7 years of memories. Photos of Abigail flooded the screen, her laughing at something off camera, sleeping with her mouth slightly open, and gazing at me in the early days. As if I was her world, I didn't cry. Instead, I sat surrounded by the weight of everything we had built together and everything we had let go. On the 80th day, an email from Abigail arrived asking if we could meet to discuss what would come next once our 6-month separation neared its end. With 3 months left, she wanted to be ready for whatever path we might take. We met at a different coffee shop, neutral ground. She looked good, healthy. Her hair was fresh to shoulder length, and she wore minimal makeup. It was a bittersweet moment, full of unspoken possibilities and unresolved echoes of past promises. Dressed simply in jeans, a sweater, and boots, her usual flashy designer purse replaced by a practical canvas tote, she cut straight to the heart of the matter. She asked me frankly if I was considering reconciliation or divorce. I confessed that I was still on the fence and asked what she wanted. With earnestness brimming in her voice, she expressed her desire to try again on one condition. She needed to know I could genuinely forgive her, not just utter the words while secretly harboring resentment. She claimed she had changed over the past 11 weeks and was still evolving, and she longed for the opportunity to show me this new version of herself rather than simply talking about it. I admitted that I believed in her transformation and acknowledged I had changed too. Yet I was uncertain whether these new versions of ourselves were still compatible or if we had drifted in separate directions. She nodded, accepting my hesitation as fair. Then she handed me a sealed envelope, explaining that it contained her proposed terms for both reconciliation and divorce. She urged me to read it when I was ready and share my thoughts. 3 days later, I opened the envelope to find a remarkably thoughtful and level-headed proposal, crafted with a maturity I hadn't anticipated. For reconciliation, she suggested we engage in 6 months of couples therapy before moving back in together, ensure full financial transparency, conduct regular relationship satisfaction check-ins, and hold State of the Union discussions annually about our goals and progress. For a divorce, she proposed a fair division of our assets based on contributions rather than a strict 50-50 split. She would buy out my share of the house at market value and suggested a clean break with no alimony and minimal legal involvement. It was a clear, practical plan, a world apart from the Abigail who, 3 months ago, had seemed so different. I emailed her, agreeing that both sets of terms were reasonable and asked for some time to make my decision. Her reply was simple. Take all the time you need. Today marks day 93 months since those stirring words broke the silence in my kitchen, ushering in a period of solitude, reflection, and growth. Throughout, I found myself daydreaming about Kakesti, one I hope to bake someday, sweet and satisfying, like the possibilities that lie ahead. On the day meant to celebrate my birthday, a symbolic moment unfolded, marking a pivotal change in my life. This afternoon, I returned to the familiar bakery, picked up the same cake, drove to my fresh new apartment, and set it carefully on my new kitchen counter. Capturing the moment, I snapped a photo and sent it directly to Abigail, the first message I had initiated in the 90 days since everything crumbled. She called immediately, but I let it go to voicemail. Instead, I sat down on my second-hand couch with a slice of cake and listened to her message. Abigail's voice was calm and understanding. She didn't plead or make assumptions. Instead, she recognized the significance of the cake, accepted whatever decision I was leaning toward, and expressed pride in the way I had navigated this storm with grace rather than destruction. She apologized once more, with no expectation of forgiveness, yet offered her words sincerely. Tomorrow holds a meeting with my lawyer, not to sign papers for divorce just yet, but rather to explore the options before me. I want to learn what reconciliation might truly entail after such a profound rupture, to fully grasp what each path would mean. Tonight, this cake will be my solitary companion, not out of sorrow, but because some paths require walking alone to discover oneself. I'm uncertain if Abigail and I have a future together. The hurt runs deep, and rebuilding shattered trust is no small feat. Yet I'm determined that whatever choice I make will come from a place of strength and clear-eyed understanding, not fear or confusion. Those words on the kitchen table reveal something starkly harsh, yet perhaps they uncover something vital we needed to face. Maybe we had to fall apart completely to understand our core, or maybe some fractures should remain as they are. Regardless, I have found peace with this journey. The man who left that cake on the counter 90 days ago would have sacrificed everything, even his own well-being, for Abigail. Now the man writing this is rooted in self-awareness and self-worth. I'll share one final update when I've reached my decision. Until then, thank you for joining me on this journey, my internet companions. Your advice, support, and even your occasional dreadful revenge suggestions have been valuable in unexpected ways. An unusual form of therapy has emerged, leaving me not just standing tall, but also breathing deeply and feeling stronger than ever. Like Noah, finding solid ground amidst unpredictable waves, I have weathered my own storms and come out more resilient on the other side.